Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Spiritually Speaking. As you can see, I have the amazing Michael O'Connor, astrologer, with us again today. So welcome again, Michael. And we're going to have a great conversation today. I'm very excited.
Thank you, Dee. Lovely to be here and good to see you. And I'm excited as well. This topic of focus on the sun, hey, is what we are zeroed in on. So I'm happy to share, having studied it from the perspective of astrology and astronomy for many years, I think, and spirituality as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ways one can understand the sun.
Yeah, I think it's a great conversation. And you said something in our last recording that really grabbed my attention, which was that we actually live in the sun. And I had never heard that at all, ever. So I'm interested to see what.
Yeah, it's actually an ancient knowing. There's a lot of things that we are kind of taught in school, et cetera, that aren't entirely true, but they're presented as truths and facts, but it's not really like that. The notion of the sun at the center of the solar system is really quite ancient, but the way that the Catholic Church emerged based on a geocentric perspective and it upheld the theology, etc., emerged as well. So it was kind of power and control at worst. But what is true about that whole perspective is that what's called geocentric, which is Earth-centered, versus heliocentric, which is sun-centered. Okay, so there's in the perspective of existence, we basically the accepted truth, and I'll kind of phrase things a little bit like that, is that the sun is at the center of the solar system. And I believe that. Okay, there's every good reason to believe that that's exactly right. But our experience and perception of existence is geocentric. We experience it from the earth, and
Right.
astrology is about that. And so, what astrology includes is this, it very significantly brings forward the reality of perception. Like in science, they'll often say you can't take the observer out of the experiment. So if you extend that to our perception, you must acknowledge that we experience existence geocentrically.
Mhm.
Geocentric is what makes the sun appear to go around us. So right away, as soon as you get into the geocentric versus heliocentric, you're in a perceptual riddle of sorts. Because the truth is, the fact is, the Earth, as does all the planets in the solar system, okay, so that's a key phrase to identify that the sun is at the center of the solar system.
Right.
All the planets orbit around it. All the planets go around the sun in a very consistent, rhythmic, cyclic manner.
Mhm.
All very consistent, rhythmic, no very, very, very minute, if any, alterations in their entire cycle. It's kind of this amazing, kind of repetitive thing. Now,
Right.
there may be incremental changes, but generally, no. Okay, that there's some deep levels of scientific observation may observe small anomalies, but even they probably correct themselves even. So it's this really interesting reality. But from a geocentric perspective, we experience all kinds of crazy things that, like planets appearing to accelerate, then slow down, then stop, then go backwards. That's called retrograde planets.
Mm.
Okay. So even though we know it's not a fact, it's an experiential reality perceptually. So
Right.
you really got to understand that perceptual theme to get what we're talking about. Okay. Because again, scientists will say, no, the sun is at the center of the solar system. And I'll say, yes, but that's an abstract fact, not an experiential fact. And the difference between abstract and experiential is very important to understand because experiential means we individually and collectively are having this experience. So
Right.
if you want to omit the experiential fact, you've now taken the observer out of the experiment, which in science you can't do. So
Right.
there's a little bit of convenient, what some might call contradiction, or what on a more conspiratorial sense is called doublespeak. They want it both ways. Look, you can't have it both ways. Okay, like the sun, yes, is factually at the center of the solar system, but it's an abstract fact to our experience. So we have to honor both geocentric and heliocentric. They must both be acknowledged. Otherwise, we've taken us, the observers, out of the experiment. And it gets into, when you get into deeper reaches of psychology and quantum physics, et cetera, you can't, it's just kind of, you enter into these paradoxical conundrums. And
Mhm.
that's a really important aspect of science that must be contended with, which is occurring in the world right now very quickly. So the mechanistic model of science is being challenged, by the way, by perceptual psychology, which is known as neuroscience, and by quantum physics, which is sort of the mystical branch of physics, which gets into all these paradoxical realities, which blends, quantum physics blends the perception factor with the otherwise abstract, linear, observational thing that goes on in physics. So
Yeah.
they're both very relevant. It's not about eliminating one for the other. Okay. So here we are on a planet orbiting around a sun, but that's not our experiential reality. And what we experience is the sun rising and setting.
Yes.
The average person doesn't say, "Oh, the sun's rising." They don't say, "Oh, the earth is turning."
That's
But
very
the
true.
sun rising and setting is the earth turning. So
Yeah.
it's really quite gets into this very clever little world of perceptions
Mhm.
and relative illusions, and the way that the brain works, and the way that the chemistry and the psychology process of brain function, it all gets mixed up in there. It's very wonderful.
It is.
So it's, and when you get really close to it, you realize facts are funny things. We work with facts, but when you get into the subjectivity of perception, facts become very personal, by the way. It's really an ironic kind of conversation. I don't want to get long-winded into this, but it's like all perception is subjective. Okay.
Yes.
So it's not, okay, we can say the facts of things, but then without getting too philosophical, well, what's the context of that fact? What does the fact mean to you?
Mhm.
How are you employing that fact? Okay, these are very significant statements, because a fact you can kind of say a fact cannot exist in a vacuum. It has context. Context links itself to what's called paradigms or worldview. Like science has a worldview, a paradigm. Astrology is a different worldview. So, where the modern science is kind of a physics worldview, astrology, for example, is a metaphysics worldview.
Mhm.
It mean we say meta, it means it beyond the physics, which invariably by the very word incorporates other dimensionality, as we talked about last time.
Yeah.
So it gets into this other dimensions, the unseen layers of reality behind. Okay, now when we get to the sun, the temptation of our ego mind, and this is another kind of a spiritual perspective, that in our ego mind, we experience and perceive reality a certain way. So we are tempted to look at the sun and go, there is the sun, and it's like an object in the sky.
Right.
That's our ego, right? There it is. So it's not wrong to look at the sun that way. There it is, so to speak.
Yeah.
But the entire solar system is contained by the sun. So the sun we see in the sky from that perspective, it would be can be metaphorically related to the nucleus of an atom.
Hmm.
So the nucleus of an atom is the brain of the atom. Okay, there's this brain thing. So
Right.
the sun is like the brain, basically speaking. We could actually expand upon the sun as a brain. It's more than a brain. See, the sun is like a body. And according to ancient spiritual traditions, way beyond those thoughts, the sun is a being. It's a cosmic being. All
Right.
right. So modern science came along and said, we're changing the being to a thing.
Hmm.
But the thing that you're talking about, the sun, is the giver of life in
Yeah.
for all intents and purposes in the solar system, at least, even though, excuse me, it has its life from a larger cosmological relationship.
Right.
Like our sun is a part of the galaxy. The
Mhm.
galaxy is a part of the universe, basically speaking. So our sun is like a to call the sun a thing is a principle of what's called reductionistic logic. The thing that you're referring to has many a very complex composition for one,
Mhm.
and most importantly, it gives life via radiation. So it's hard to eliminate the life-giving properties of the sun, but the temptation in a reductionistic thinking is there.
Mhm.
So we reduce it, but no, you can't, because if it wasn't for the sun, you wouldn't be here, or nor would there be life on the planet. That also is associated with the moon, by the way. No moon, no life. The moon is like a very significant feature of how life on the planet works, by the way. It's not arbitrary. There could be, you can't have no moon. There would be no life. And there's studies been shown, blah, blah, blah. This is where, like we live in a time in history when science fiction in movies is really fun and exciting and impressive. And they'll talk about people living on a moon. And
Mhm.
maybe that's possible. But generally speaking, it's not certain that that's true. Like that's a kind of a tricky thing. Science fiction. I like science fiction. It's
Yeah.
very imaginative. It's very wonderful the way that movie makers make r- illusions into reality.
Mhm.
It's
There,
very, but
there's
it
a
plays on our perception.
concept going on the planet right now that, and it's pretty well known, and you may have heard of it, that the ideas for these movies have been given to us by some kind of galactic being, force, whatever, so that we can prepare the planet for eventualities in this disclosure that's happening kind of planet wide right now.
Yeah, well, those are fair theories to acknowledge. There's all kinds of ways of looking at the natural, like, well, yes, there's notions of interdimensional beings, and why wouldn't there be some who have aspired to and have achieved communication
Hmm.
via, generally speaking, what's called channeling. But if they're interdimensional, they may well be here. It's true. And all of this. So, it's kind of a debatable question of whether the science has developed since, go back to Egypt and then eventually Greece and the whole notion of logic, and step by step we developed science and technology. And of course, they were doing their own versions of it in China and South America, Mesoamerica, uh, the Middle East, etc., India. They all had their advanced levels of technology way back before the what emerged to be the scientific revolution, right, in the West. And then we are now living only a few centuries since the, scientific revolution.
Hmm.
It's or about. So it's not, and okay, so here we are. I don't mean to get lost in that, but what I want to bring it back to is the sun's energy field, the radiation field of the sun is said to extend for the distance of the speed that light travels in one day. Okay, so the speed of light for one day is said to be the extent of the reach of the solar radiation field. And if one were to go online and just look at the sun's energy field, or you would look onto what's called the solar system as a whole, they would see that the sun reaches at a reach, and then it reaches what's called I believe it's called the bow shock. Okay, so that means it's like there's like the Earth has an atmosphere, like a skin around it, so to speak, an atmospheric layer. So does the solar system. And then it has, like the Earth having levels of atmosphere, so does the solar system as a whole. So you have the bow shock, you have what's called the heliopause. Those two in particular. Okay. So there's these two main layers. So that means that the entire solar system is in a way has like an energetic skin around it.
Hmm.
Okay, it's not just some nebulous thing, just like the Earth. That's why when the spaceships come back into the Earth's orbit, they go in through a fiery moment. It
Right.
gets really hot
Hmm.
because, okay, so they have to hit it at a very particular speed at a particular angle. I don't know those details at this moment, but I get the gist of it because of the physics of the atmospheric principles linked to scientific laws, etc. The same is true of the solar system as a whole. So the notion, by the way, that we could even get out of the solar system in a spaceship is not sure. Because once a spaceship, say, reached the heliopause, it would deal with that membrane. So that hasn't been discussed a lot popularly. It's not been proven. The reason why is because Pluto, for example, which, okay, is not considered officially a planet, it's now called a dwarf planet and blah, blah, blah. Okay, and there are planets beyond Pluto, okay, in the solar system. That's in the Kuiper belt and these far reaches of the solar system. But Pluto is quite far out, and the other ones are pretty far out there too. But Pluto's only 8 hours of the speed of light. That's a long distance.
Hmm.
At the current rate of propulsion, well, it's a long conversation. I don't mean to get long-winded about this, but the the way that they put satellites far out into space is they use the gravitational pull of the planet. So they slingshot them off the planet, which is very, very impressive science and engineering. It's what would be, engineering of satellites and basically satellites, which orbit around the planets and take pictures and do various kinds of studies. It's very impressive. But the thing what I'm trying to say is that Pluto is 1/3 the distance of the entire reach of the sun's energy field, and that's in a spherical, three-dimensional, 360-degree reach. So it's like a ball being expanded, right? So that it
Right.
goes in every direction, the speed of light for one day. Okay, so there you go. There's the sun. Now, so you have this energy field of the sun that expands the speed of light for one day. So the sun in the center is its nucleus, its intelligence, its source, but its energy field expands beyond it. So everything in the solar system is in that field. Okay, so it's in the what would be
Amazing.
called generally the solar field, the solar radiation field, which is a part of the sun's reality.
Yeah.
That's why we live in the sun, because it's not just the nucleus, just like is true of the atom. There's a whole big wide expanse beyond it, but you can't exclude that. It's a part of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow. That really
Okay.
is a beautiful concept
That's
to me. I mean, I don't know how other people are going to receive this information, but I know for me that is a really beautiful concept, the way you just explained it, that we actually live in the sun, because if we didn't have it, we couldn't live. Like you said, there would be no life if it wasn't there. So I
yes,
love this
which
concept. Yeah.
wonderful. Yes, it's beautiful. It's very ancient. The ancients revered it highly. That's why the sun, like in Egypt, it was referred to as Re, or some say Ra, Re, Ra. Or in the Greek, eventually it was Helios, the great god Helios. And in the Indian, it was Surya. And I don't remember what they call it in Chinese, but basically they all recognized keyword recognize the sun as a being, and it's not merely an energetic radiation source. There's more to the sun than that. It's an intelligence that comes from the sun that's involved in the creative reality. Okay, that's now I'm going to try and prove that. But when one goes into deeper esoteric studies of the sun, you start to come into um, the very design of the sun, the very shape, the very fact that it, like most planetary bodies and moons, etc., is spherical,
Mhm.
is a shape. The shape itself means it has a blueprint to it. In that blueprint, the sun itself and everything in existence in the entire universe, by the way, is itself multidimensional. Everything in existence is multidimensional. There's nothing that exists in the manifest universe that's not multidimensional. Even in math, there's mathematical dimensional perspective, but there's also a metaphysical perspective of dimensions. It's important for people to generally get that. It's
Mhm.
not just the mathematical dimensionality, it's another dimensionality. So there are two paradigms of perception regarding that. But anyway, the main thing is the sun, the idea is the sun contains within it intelligence. It's not merely energy, not merely radiation. No, it's okay. It's more than that. Now, the entire solar system, when you understand the entire solar system as a whole, which is an understanding of what we call holism,
Mhm.
okay, the entire solar system is like a cosmic cell. It's like the whole
Yeah.
thing is like a working, intelligent cell. So, for example, is a cell intelligent? Yes, a cell is intelligent. If you study a cell, it's like a little factory, a very highly sophisticated you're right, right? You know that.
Yeah.
A highly sophisticated complex factory. And for all of our technology, we cannot create a cell, nor can we create a seed. There's no such thing as creating a cell or a seed, because life creates life.
Yeah.
That's a very important spiritual, philosophical understanding. There's no laboratory that's going to create life. It can only replicate life, reproduce life, maybe, but it can't source life. And
Right.
that's a very, very significant thing to understand spiritually, philosophically, but also politically, because there are those who want that there's, monopoly is the life on earth is like a game of power, and monopoly is very active to this day, but most people don't think that way, but it is. If
Right.
you really get into it, there it is. Okay, but we won't get lost in that. The main thing is that the sun like this is what they mean in a way by the microcosm and the macrocosm. The microcosm atomically shows nucleus and energy, electromagnetic energy fields.
Right.
The cell, which is made of many, many atoms,
Hmm.
so atoms are very small,
Very.
and the cell is comprised of atoms, then molecules, then cells as a whole. So the cell by this point is large compared to the very small, even though they're very small. So it's kind of mind-blowing.
It
But
is.
it's a very highly sophisticated, intelligent machine, as is true of the solar system.
Hmm. Yes.
When you understand the solar system as a machine, you begin to understand that the wholeness of the sun's energy field contains within it planets, and around the planets are moons, and there's various debris, comets, asteroids, meteorites, and
Right.
stuff like that. All this kind of debris which all in very rhythmically goes around the sun also, though. Nothing's flying around too randomly, even though the orbits are highly elliptical and irregular, and what they call highly elliptical means they're not circular, they're like oval,
Hmm.
and they have what's called um, extreme angles. Like some things are, most of the planets are going around the sun this way, right?
Right.
But there's comets and other things that are going around like this and like that. Okay, but the main thing is that they're all going around the sun.
Yeah.
Point is that the sun's nucleus is there, and the energy field extends to one light day, and everything in that field is like this, can be described as a cosmic cell. So it has an whole intelligence. The planets are linked to the sun intimately, intrinsically.
Hmm.
Saying otherwise, saying it is like saying you can take a part of the cell out and
Right.
it's still the cell. No, it's not quite like that.
Right.
You see in holism, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. It's just like a human being. You cannot take a human being apart and put them back together and think that they're going to work again.
Right.
This, okay, that's because you can do that with an inanimate object like a car or anything, a house, a rocket, a car, a machine.
Yeah.
But once you have what's called breath of life and sentience,
Hmm.
you can't really do that in the same way. So it's a kind of we don't want to get lost in this statement, but it's very important spiritually to
Yeah.
understand that life comes from life, and the holism is that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. So no, like Humpty Dumpty, you can't put Humpty Dumpty back together again.
Hmm.
That's what that little nursery rhyme's about.
Yes.
Is that once it's broken and like dead in the physical sense, it can't be put that back together, to the chagrin of science, that who are in as much as they're attached to the control and the power
Mhm.
of science, which is valid enough. But it's like anything, it can become like a big ego trip. Oh,
Right.
I'm a scientist, we have the power. It's like, well, maybe, yeah, sure, but don't get too carried away. The point is, a cell and the solar system have a parallel principle. Holism is very much the study of fractals. Fractals mean the little part is a reflection of the big part. So when we talk about the cell as a whole and the solar system as a whole, we see them as a whole, as all the little parts in them as part of the whole.
Right.
I say it 3 or 4 times in different ways because it seems like people, because of our social conditioning, it's not common logic.
Right.
We have socially conditioned ourselves to think in terms of parts, not in terms of wholes. And that's part of the problem in the world, by the way. In a way, humanity has divided and conquered itself, it could be said,
Hmm.
by dissecting everything, which is fine at one level. But now that we've achieved that science, this is a bit of a political statement, we need now to return back to holism,
Hmm.
the whole planet, the whole. Okay, but anyway, that's a bit of an aside. The main thing is that the entire solar system is one whole unit. In the grand scheme of things, it's like a cosmic cell.
Yeah. I
Get
can
this.
totally see it in my mind when you're saying it that way, that it makes complete sense to me. It's a
It should really, because you're an intuitive person, and an intuitive person would generally, and it doesn't hurt that your active intelligence is including an imaginative construct, and and so forth. We'll put it this way. The sun's radiation field goes out in every distance, 360 degrees spherical for one light day.
Mhm.
Speed of light for one day. The closest star that we see in the night sky is 4.22 light years away.
Wow, that's
That's
incredible.
how big space is. Yeah, it's called Alpha Proxima. Alpha Proxima. It's a binary. Alpha Centauri, Alpha Proxima. It's the closest star. It's very exciting that scientists have figured that out,
It
to
is.
their credit, right? But 4.22 light years is close to 10,000 times further than the furthest reach of, like, I think it's the of I can't remember the exact number, but as simple as this: how many days are in 4.22 years?
Right.
Okay, that means 365 and a quarter times 4.22. That's how many. Okay, so what that
A
means
long way.
is that the what that means is that the planets in the solar system by ratio are extremely close to us.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
If like if we had a spaceship and we want to fly to Pluto, like with human beings, according to studies I did, and they may be dated now, I'm not sure, but not terribly far dated, it would take 45 years. And that's 1/3 of the distance of the solar system. 45 years, okay, for humans to be in something to go there. So you see, traveling through space, by the way, in a spaceship, it can't really happen. And there's other studies, if you go and dig around. I like sci-fi. I really do. I like the thematic bending of reality. I like mind-bending movies. I like to have my perceptions challenged.
Yeah.
But there's been studies done by scientists. They say, no, you could never have a spaceship traveling through space at the speed of light because it would disrupt the space-time continuum or something like that. It would be highly disruptive to the what might, for lack of better words, be called the, I don't know if the phrase the fabric of space.
Hmm.
Okay, but I think that's the term they use. The
Hmm.
fabric of it would be disrupted by any object artificially trying to travel through it. So Star Trek and Star Wars is just an illusion. It's a is it what's a more likely story of travel is a whole other paradigm of thinking. So the idea of Star Trek and Star Wars is what would be called propulsion, like dilithium crystals flying and very powerfully creating a super generator to fly through space. But the higher, okay, that's very material physics, what's called propulsion technology. I
Right.
myself am even questioning, are you sure that propulsion can work in the vacuum of space? I'm not even sure that that can occur, by the way, but I haven't done big studies. But basically, it goes like this. Truly and honestly, if we were ever to travel through space, we'd have to go through portals.
Hmm.
Portals are not black holes, not black holes.
Right.
Black holes are a new thing that are really capturing the attention of the imagination of people, and it's very fine and good. But portals are a different thing.
Right.
And that some people say there's portals on the planet, like they show in various movies, Stargate and all these things.
Yes.
But like what's okay, this is a really interesting one, more in a more advanced study of the notion of interdimensional, not aliens. Okay, aliens means they flew in a spaceship, but interdimensional, well, they could still have ships of some kind, but they're not traveling through space.
Hmm.
It's not some big mothership that's traveling around. Space is way too big. It's way too big. So the only way to really travel through space is through the portals, which are interdimensional.
So
So that's why humanity's, yeah,
to that point, because like I said in our previous podcast, I follow a lot of this. I call them universal being instead of extraterrestrial. It just sounds better to me. But at any rate, I follow a lot of this stuff because I'm very curious about it. I'm a very curious minded person. We've talked about this. I love to explore everything. But from what I understand from the way that it has been explained on the many podcasts that I've listened to and by these people who study this stuff all the time, it's not necessarily a moving, and maybe you can explain this if it's interdimensional or a portal type situation or whatever, but it's not that they travel from this point to this point. It's that this point is brought to this point. It like collapses, like you would fold a piece of paper and it would just bring itself together like that instead of actually traveling. Like, for instance, when you're dreaming, you would take yourself from this spot to that spot. You wouldn't walk over there. You don't like really walk around in your dreams as much as you do just find yourself all of a sudden from this space to this space.
doesn't work that way. I'm going to say no. That's just somebody attempting to take physics and make it work with notions of wormholes and bending space and all this. This is kind of wrong thinking, I think, quite frankly. What it is that dimensionality isn't like that. It's like it's based on frequencies. And
Mhm.
it's like radio stations are, so you just got to change the frequency and you're there. So it's a much different kind of conversation. That kind of conversation of bending and this and that, it's just trying to resuscitate a dead notion that we can travel through space. It doesn't work like that. I'm going to offer you that in my opinion that it doesn't know. Interdimensionality works differently. And what's really exciting and what I'm trying to get at here with all of this is the sun is the master portal. The sun is a portal. So that's why they show in various clips, you can look around online, go show a spaceship flying into the sun. And what's happening is that, okay, so these
That's
interdimensionals use the sun as a portal because it itself is multidimensional. The sun is okay, but the planets in their multidimensionality are much lesser dense objects compared to the sun. The sun's like a plasma field, right?
okay.
It's
So
not
they're
like a
less
density.
dense or more dense.
Well, I'm not a physicist to know exactly the details, but it goes like this. This is an interesting little fact, according to science. Get this. All of the planets and the moons and all the debris in the solar system could fit into Jupiter. All of it would fit into the sun and more, like even more. Like So you took all the planets, all the meteors, all the moons, all the asteroids, everything, comets, you can pack it all into the size of Jupiter. Okay.
Mm.
But Jupiter, but in the solar system, the sun is 99.9% the mass of the entire solar system still.
Wow.
Some people say it's 99.99%. So, but basically giving it a being a bit liberal, 99.9% of the mass of the solar system is the sun, first of all. So there's not 1%. 1/100th of a percent is the everything else put together. So that's how big the
Amazing.
energy and the sun's like might and energy and power and reality is. It's that large. Could you imagine the mass? So you see, when we and I do it and you do it, it's not wrong. We look at the sun in the sky, we kind of see this object, and it's a bit of a perceptual illusion because we, of course, live in the whole atmosphere of the planet Earth. So we do live in this little bubble, which is a kind of a large bubble to us, but it's a small bubble in the grand scheme of things, which is kind of ironic too.
Yeah,
But the thing is that the Earth is spinning on its axis, by the way, 1,000 kilometers an hour
that's crazy.
spinning, and it's moving through space 38 kilometers a second, not an hour, a second. So this is why some people like flat earther types, they'll go, oh, that can't be happening. But what they're trying to do is they're, I think, projecting physics onto it. But life is not like life, our experience of life cannot be reduced to physics because quantum physics itself says no, there's no real math. Like there's it's all energy.
Yeah,
So this is why the mystics of old have said this is a relative illusion. Now that's a mind bender.
it
So
is.
modern quantum physics have become the mystics of science. And they're proving it from a scientific perspective that the mystics of old were right. It's not hard in the complete final way. And that's where we get back to atoms and molecules and cells as conglomerate together. And because we exist in this physical realm, we do experience by it all a hardness, a substance, a hardness, an enduring reality to it, a lifespan, and to get into time and all these things. But so it's a real conundrum for the honest scientists to have to contend with quantum physics.
Yeah, I
So
can
the
see
quantum
where it would
physicists are
be.
like, as far as the average physicist goes, the quantum physicists are a bunch of nuts. They're cuckoo practically. Now, I do deeply admire and respect science and engineering in
Mhm.
its capacity to make things, computers, bridges, buildings, spaceships. It's deeply impressive. So there's no shame in the capacities of science and technology.
Right.
However, the irony of ironies is, and this is the greatest mind bender of all, it's all ultimately kind of like an illusion.
Mhm.
And that's the quantum physicists would tell you this. So I don't want to get lost in that. It's too paradoxical. It's too much of a mind bender to fully uh, grasp.
It really,
Okay, I think
it
we
really
can.
truly is. I've listened to some of
Yeah,
that
we
stuff, and
could.
they say, because we have way more equipment now, as you know, like you've said before, we keep getting this more and more equipment that's so good at finding these smaller and smaller things. We go from atomic to subatomic and keep going. they said as they study this and they keep going down, down, down into these smaller levels, what they finally get to is space. There's nothing there. Like, and
Yeah,
even
that's the
where like
whole.
it kind of blinks in and out of existence as we know it. It's this perpetual, like you said, illusion. It's amazing.
It's what that blinking is called the strobe of existence. It's a way of describing it. It means that existence, this is where you get into esoteric science. Light produce create manifesting, or light manifesting as sound from higher dimensions creates vibration. If
Hmm.
it wasn't for the vibration frequency, nothing would appear to exist. So what people talk about as it's all energy, they'll say it's all energy.
Yeah.
The deeper understanding is yes, but the energy is all mind. This is a very important understanding. That's what's called the Hermetic law. It's not like, yes, it's energy, but the energy has you have to go a couple of steps further. Okay, so people will say every single day with absolute bona fide die-hard conviction that it's energy, but the energy is mind. That's a very important distinction when you understand mind versus energy. And furthermore, mind comes from spirit, and spirit is not energy. And that is another mind bender of a whole entire category that most people have not given serious consideration to. So we're still, it's not wrong to say it's all energy. It's very exciting, and it's opening the doors to a whole world of understanding, which is basically known as the 369 principle, or energy vibration frequency.
Mhm.
Energy vibration frequency. Okay. That is very Tesla, very deeper, ancient knowing. The ancients knew all of this.
Yeah.
Okay, just important to understand. I mean, they didn't build the pyramid out of nothing, right? They knew things to
Yeah.
build things like that, and there's pyramids all over the planet. And so that's a whole other conversation for another time. So we'll leave that alone. But I want to get back to this. This what we're doing is stretching our perspective around the sun. So
Hmm.
yes, the entire solar system can be understood as the expanded body of the sun.
Yeah.
The nucleus is one thing, and okay, so the entire thing works as a system. It's a whole, like a cell. Once that's understood, you're there. If one can't do that, you're not allowed in. Sorry, you don't get that. You don't get that it works like a whole cell. If you don't appreciate that and your mind still thinks parts, it's kind of, it sounds a little arrogant. I don't mean to, but it's kind of like, sorry, you didn't get the answer. If you
Yeah.
don't understand that it works as a whole, you
And
don't understand.
and
I don't
again,
know
that
quite else
brings
how to
it
say it.
right back to the social conditioning because we've been taught to um diminish this, the magic, what I consider to be the magic of what we live, our lives, just period. We've been taught to minimize that and look at things in these compartmentalized ways and just yeah. So I think that some people, it's not that they don't
Yeah.
want to get it, it's just that they're absolutely incapable because of societal conditionings. Their brain's just not going to open that door. It's not.
No, it's not. No, that's right. It's true. It will not compute because they haven't gone through the stages of various forms of initiation, which
Right.
the initiation doesn't strictly mean ceremonies and dark robes. No, it's just a journey of, it's called in spiritual tradition, they call it on the path.
Yeah.
Okay, one has to embark upon the path, which is also described as the awakening to being awake. You
Hmm.
have to awaken. You have to awaken to being awake. What happens before you do that, the tendency is to operate out of the ego mind alone. The
Yes.
ego mind is usually a process of the rational mind and the gut in its belief systems working. But what's missing, interestingly enough, is the intuitive center. The
Yeah.
intuitive center happens to be the heart chakra center. And now, by the way, it's a little bit of a mystical thing to understand that the planets and the sun and they themselves, we're not, this is a little bit hard to explain this, but it's like there in the philosophy of holism, there's no real division. There's apparent separation and division, but we hear it all the time. There's no division, there's no separation, there's no okay.
Right.
So that means, see, the planets in the solar system, by the way, can be understood as our cosmic organs. They are literally, not kind of, I'm not meaning metaphorically, I mean literally, literally the planets and the solar system as a whole is our cosmic organs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they're not kind of, it's physics is, oh, they're over there and there's going to be energy or not energy. No, 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 no. That's like saying that, okay, this part of the cell over here is not affecting that part of the cell over there because there's a distance.
Right.
Wrong.
Right.
Wrong thinking, wrong thinking. It's all whole. So the whole solar system operates as that. Is there's no time space factor. Now that's true, they say in quantum physics across the universe, which is okay, fine to say those things, but it's not easily provable. But what is more graspable, what's more clear is that the solar system's like a cosmic cell. And the sun is the brain and more. It's more than the brain. Okay, if you study brain in the body, there's basically three brains:
Yes.
head, heart, gut. Okay, head is the reasoning brain, gut is the instinct brain, and heart is the intuitive brain.
Yeah.
Okay, all three brains. So it's similar with the sun. The sun would be known as the heart brain, but what's ironic is the heart brain is the master brain.
Yeah.
It's the higher intelligence than this is a processor, like our cerebral cortex and the head brain, it processes perceptions.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's a processor.
Yeah.
The heart brain is an accessor.
Yeah.
That's the difference. Process, access.
Yeah. That's a
And the
great
gut brain,
distinction.
the gut, the gut brain is the very deeply woven within the deep memory. It's not just chromosomes and DNA, but people get into a crossover thinking that the memory is in the DNA. It's like, no, the DNA is a mechanical part that's processing mind.
Mm-hmm.
It's not to think that the part is the intelligence is no, no, you got it backwards. That's all the part cells, they have their own whole intelligence,
Mm-hmm.
but they're in the field of the mind.
Right.
Okay, so the same is true of the sun. So what I'm kind of trying to get to here is that the sun, as the center of the solar system, having an intelligence, by extension, because it can be described from this perspective as our cosmic, our the sun would be called our master cosmic organ.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the master, and the sun directly corresponds to your heart chakra.
Wow.
Directly, not kind of, not maybe, exactly. So the heart chakra is the master portal in your physical body. So mystically speaking, if we want to travel through space, through portal dimensional access, you will have to go through in some, it's, see, what I'm trying to say is you can't apply the physics of science to achieve it. You have to get into the metaphysics is one way of describing it, but that you have to kind of really get into what would be called the spiritual science of the chakras, which are can be described as our segment prong plug into multidimensionality. Okay, so you start to understand that the body mechanism uh, is not isolated like we think.
Mm-hmm.
Like, in other words, we think we're kind of isolated, but the fact is we're breathing air which is contained in the atmosphere. You
Yes.
can't not have the atmosphere, like it doesn't work that way. And
Right.
neither, of course, can you breathe water underwater. You just have to go, you can go high up on a mountain where the air is thin, or you could go underwater. You cannot function there. So you begin to have a kind of what you call humility, a type of respect.
Mm-hmm.
See, this modern science has done us great services. We've dissected nature, but we've become arrogant.
Mm-hmm.
Arrogant.
Oh,
We
so
think
much
because we've
so.
done, oh, we're no, we're very like, now that we've gone down to the minutiae and we can see the greater universe, in many ways. We understand so much, like even the notion of galaxies is not that old, 100 years old, about. Not that old,
I didn't realize
right?
that.
Just about a little
That's
over
like a
100 years. That's it.
baby concept.
There was So anyway, the point is, now that we have achieved this level of science, technology, engineering, which is wonderful,
Mm-hmm.
we have to return back to spiritual science, because we by the endeavor to achieve what we have has led to the compartmentalization of reality, which is artificial.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's artificial,
It really is.
just like AI. So AI is the epitome of the artificial. It's right in the word, artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
And when we get really close philosophically to the word artificial, so would somebody here like the real apple, or would you like the artificial one?
Right. Yeah.
It's a fairly simple answer. Would you like the real person or the artificial? Would you like the real experience or the artificial?
Yeah.
And it goes on and on like that.
And
Artificial
unfortunately,
is a,
there's a lot of people choosing the artificial these days. And it's
oh,
very, it's
yeah.
very, I mean, we could go down that rabbit hole too, but it's very disconcerting. And we'll get back to the sun. And I do have a question about the sun,
Okay.
because I know there's a lot of talk about solar flares and different things like that. So could you speak into that for just a moment?
Well, because that again, you've heard me go back and forth between physics and metaphysics, and they really should be both acknowledged as relevant, even though the physics ultimately has to yield to the metaphysics. It remains very significantly our experience of life.
Yeah,
So it would be, again, assumptive to dismiss the physics, that's for sure.
right.
Okay, so we want to honor both. We want to
Yes.
honor both. There's good. The sun, in the truth is that the sun and the moon in particular, in terms of energy fields, have an influence on this planet. The sun
Mhm.
and moon in particular. So even though all the planets in the solar system are part of a whole cell, and we can see it in a mind sense that it's one whole,
Mhm.
but in an energetic sense, and it may have energetic correspondences, but if one studies astrology well, by the way, they realize that it's not energetic correspondences that creates the synchronicities of astrology, by the way. So I just want to make that bit of an aside statement. It's not energetic physics that makes what astrology works. So they can't think it's the energy of Jupiter, the energy of Saturn. So if you understand astrology well, you must understand multidimensionality. You must study holism. Otherwise, you do not understand it. So most people reject astrology. And even those who are fascinated, they still don't know how and why it works. And the simple answer is it's based on metaphysics and multidimensionality. Once somebody understands that, you're in. Now we can go. And basically the word holism comes right to the fore right away. Metaphysics, holism, multidimensionality, they're all kind of synonymous terms. Okay. So now the sun, though, also, as much as that we can talk about its metaphysical, esoteric oneness, we live in the sun, all this, there's also another level of experience, which is its radiation field.
Mm-hmm.
So the sun is very actively alive in its, very particular constitution, etc. So it's a question of various branches of science and cosmological physics and science to want to understand large cycles linked to solar activity, right? Solar activity. So in other words, the sun's very alive, and what it in its aliveness includes is solar flare or sunspot activity. And I'm sure some very brilliant, dedicated scientists who study physics of the sun understand, but still there's mysteries in it. Why exactly, and what is it related to, and what's the deeper source of all of this? And the idea the idea is that because we live in the sun, the expanded body, it's related to us. Now, that may sound a little, strong for some people because they think, well, oh, we think we're so special. Oh, they get angry that we are humans. We're a plague on the planet. We hurt the animals. We pollute the air. We should be wiped out.
Mm,
It's that kind of thinking itself is a kind of reductionism that's very attached to survival. It's a very instinctual response
right.
to think what I just said. Highly sentimental, instinct-based thinking, that one. But when you understand that the human being is a higher functioning species, it doesn't make us, strictly speaking, better, strictly speaking, than all the animals and the beautiful life on the planet, strictly, right? But it does make us more sophisticated, more complex. And when you get into that complexity, you get into deeper understandings of things like the intimate, intrinsic, holistic relationship we share with the everything. But in a holistic sense, we say we first share a relationship in our own body, the
Right.
primary relationship with your own body, mind, heart, and soul. That's the prime. Okay, so even if your partner, you're still you as a apparently separate unit, and you're a whole being, just as the cells that comprise us are whole, we're
Okay.
whole, etc. But then we get into the whole planet, and then we get in, okay, we live together on this whole planet, then we get into the whole solar system. So what I'm getting at, I don't mean to get lost in a tangent, is that the mind field of the whole cell of the sun isn't separate from us.
Right.
Yeah, it's a more of a communion. So as it goes through changes, we go through changes, and it's hard to say, are we going through changes because it's going through changes? First of all, the answer would be yes. But is it possible
Yeah.
that it goes through changes because we are going through changes? Like what I mean by we, what I'm talking about is collective consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
the collective mind, Jungian psychology, the collective mind, or what would be called the collective soul.
Right.
So the answer in a way is it's kind of both.
Yeah.
There's a relationship. Yeah.
Because that would go back to what you said earlier about taking the body apart and then putting it back together, and it's not going to, and one thing that happens in the body over here is going to affect something that the body feels it in other places. You can't, isolate when your back hurts and you get up to walk, that it affects the way you walk because that part of your body hurts. So it's affecting the whole in that way. So you can't isolate it. So that makes perfect sense to me, that the sun affects us and then we also affect the sun. That to me, that just makes sense.
Yes, and when you get into holism, one of the most fundamental and significant and wonderful words is relationship.
Hmm.
Everything is in when I use the word intrinsic, it means that the relationships between the apparent parts is when we say intrinsic, it means they appear to be apart. They appear to be something you can take away, but you cannot.
Right.
It's so intrinsic that the relationship, it's almost like even using the word is almost like redundant.
Yeah.
It's so intimately intrinsic that the notion of separation becomes an illusion.
Mhm.
But in our perception, our our head brain processes, and the way it processes, by the way, basically, is it identifies, differentiates, categorizes, sorts things out,
Mhm.
and the head brain differentiates is the key word. It
Yeah.
separates. So our perception it's not, it's wonderful that it does that. It's good, but if you like, that's the whole deeper reach of science and philosophy. If you limit yourself to the head brain, which is the dividing, sorting, categorizing, differentiating, separating perceptual function,
Yeah.
that's processing perceptual information. If you limit it there, you are caught in separation consciousness.
Hmm.
That's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
But that's why they say that the heart chakra, the intuitive chakra, is the master brain because it thinks in terms of unity.
Yeah.
It doesn't think parts, processing, separation, dividing, sorting, categorizing. No. It's kind of like the heart chakra is what could be called a communion brain.
Hmm.
It's the brain that knows we're deeply, deeply connected with everything.
Yeah.
And sure, it could be one hole within a hole within a hole within a hole. It's true. It
Yeah.
goes like that. But it gets so you see where this is where you, quite frankly, it may sound like a bit of a leap for some, but it goes like this. That's why the word holy is spiritual.
Hmm.
Holy, holism.
Just stick a W on the front of that holy, huh?
In a way,
The
yes,
L in there.
it's the exactly not the well, kind of like the semantics, but the just the whole language construct. Yes, whole, holistic, holy, holism, wholesome.
Yeah.
You know, just and I guess they had to. The thing is, like, if you write the word whole, HOLE, you're kind of looking at something.
Yeah.
So the W kind of brings it in as a whole.
Right.
But when we say holism, we don't add the W,
Right.
which is a bit of a thing. That's where languages are imperfect constructs. They
Yes.
have various, some languages are more sophisticated than the others. And as great as English is because it's easier to learn apparently than other languages, because it has a sort of a logical order to it in basic way of thinking. Not a linguist, but basically. But other languages are considered to be far more sophisticated in their subtleties.
Hmm.
German alone, so other languages, certainly the ancient languages, generally speaking, Hebrew, Arabic, Aramaic, Greek, uh, ancient Indian, I guess, which we called Sanskrit.
Hmm.
various dialects of Chinese. I'm not sure. At that point, it gets a little out of my reach there, but basically, yes, is that language is limited
Yeah.
and the concepts, and it's part of our perceptual reality too, that English is like that now. It's all kind of like what I generally refer to, and not I didn't make it up when I say this, the human condition.
Hmm.
The human condition is a great phrase to be aware of in one's general perceptions, because when you go, ah, it's the human condition, it means that humanity is at a certain place. And the human condition's at a complex time right now because, in part, well, significantly due to modern technology, we've transcended our borders. So even though we continue to function with nationalistic borders, the internet has transcended the borders.
Absolutely.
Right. And the Olympics, positively speaking, symbolically, and all kinds of sports, positively,
Yes.
um, merge a multinational spirit of excellence. And so while there's a lot of people that are putting down the Olympics right now for all kinds of reasons, I think they're throwing away the baby with the bathwater and not acknowledging that these pretty dedicated, coordinated, talented people are in an international, friendly, fair, even though competition and cheating occurs.
Yes.
Generally speaking, you see what I'm trying to say. It's spirit. It's a kind of a spiritual thing. So the human condition is at this place with modern technology where we're creating what basically can be called the global village.
Hmm. Yeah. It's
I don't mean to get
really,
lost in that one too much, but it kind of comes back a little bit to what we started as with the geocentric, Earth-centered global village now. And of course, invariably, it includes politics.
oh, of course.
Yeah,
Of
yeah,
course.
yeah, yeah.
And I
So
don't know
it
that
just
we'll
comes full
always,
circle.
I don't know that we'll ever get away from politics completely, but it would certainly be
No.
nice if it was a more heart-centered endeavor so that it would be for the benefit of all of, all life, period, just all life. And I mean that in a way that, we would take better care of our planet and our animals and our, our ecosystems and all of that, all life, not just human life. And I know that's really probably people are like, oh my God, Dee, like whatever. But that's
No.
what I feel. That's truly what I feel. I would love to see that happen. And it may not happen in my lifetime, but I can always keep putting out that loving energy and be hopeful about it.
Well, that's what I was going to say. As a matter of fact, Dee, the truth of the matter is, and this is again a bit of a paradoxical statement, is that you can, like your hope, your prayer for that is already available to you as long as you do it.
Mhm.
Like what I mean by that is okay, this is a bit of an extension to what we're talking about, okay? But it goes back to what I was saying originally. You can't take the observer out of the experiment, and we experience the whole cosmos from a geocentric perspective. But you and I, every person, but you in this case, are the center of the universe as far as your perceptual experience of life goes, and that's true of me and every one of us.
Right.
So if you choose and focus and orient yourself to experience life from your heart chakra, which you are doing this, you are already living in that reality. I just want to say that, even though the whole of the world isn't entirely
Right.
okay. But what can happen, positively speaking, without sounding like it's a spiritual high, you can detach yourself from hoping or even wanting the world to be that, although it's a nice idea, like that it would be, we'd be functioning at an enlightened level of civilization, like
Yes.
that, what we're talking about, enlightened level of civilization. But in as positive a way as it can be said, and I do appreciate it takes effort to do this, but um, by detaching, not detachment does not mean indifference,
Right.
but by functioning from your own heart chakra and detaching yourself from if and when the world gets to that place,
Yeah.
you're actually already experiencing it without the weight of the condition it's in.
Yeah.
It's kind of an ironic thing. Okay.
It is.
So it's a little bit of a stretch, but it kind of does come back to the experiential perception of the primary relationship each of us have. So it comes back to our primary relationship with our own body, mind, heart, and soul. And
Right.
it comes full circles with everything we said today. So in a holistic understanding, you enter into that communion consciousness is what we've been sort of talking about today.
Yeah.
Communion consciousness, and you think holistically, wholes within wholes. So each and every one of us, see what I'm trying to say about the human condition is that our challenge is to kind of accept that the human condition is here now.
Mhm.
It's okay, and it's true that things are the way we've become comfortable, familiar, and secure with things over our lifetime. And you and I, born in the years we have been born in, have experienced some really quite wonderful years. If you think of culture and the
Yes.
world, right?
Yeah.
Since the 60s, right? And the younger people, a little less so, and it's more complex for them. But the thing is that to the best of our ability, if we can accept the human condition as being in this place, it's acceptance doesn't mean you condone it. It
Right.
doesn't mean you're supporting, okay. It just means you're humbly accepting that the human condition is ever changing.
Hmm.
And then what happens is, well, in a nutshell statement, what I'm trying to say is you begin to see the cup half full everywhere.
Yes.
It's a kind of what could be called a what's right with the world philosophy.
Yes. Yeah, and there's
See
a
that?
lot
Like
that's
there's a
right.
lot
And
of
I think
people.
people miss that. And I do believe that
Mhm.
that's why people are so depressed, they're so angry, they're so,
Yeah,
they're just so messed up in their, minds about it because they're here, and understandably so, because
exactly.
that's what we've been conditioned to do. So that's not a throwdown on anyone by any means, but there is so much right in this world, but I shouldn't say but. The thing is that we have been so conditioned to live in the drama. We want the bad news. The bad news sells because people want that drama. That's why you see people recording people bad situations on their cell phones, getting the video instead of calling 911 and getting some help or helping them themselves in some kind of way. They're getting that video because because they want to post it because it's going to get all these views. We live in this just dramatic place, and then if someone posts like this beautiful video, and I've actually said this before and I've done it, post these videos of a sunrise with the audio of the birds chirping and things like that.
Yeah.
Beautiful,
Mhm.
amazing things happening, beautiful people helping other people. And that just doesn't get the press. It doesn't get the views because we're so caught up in the, other crap.
And that's exactly the point. And I agree with you. Now here's the key. You're saying we just now the key is say I am no longer you could say that that's
Right.
thing we can all achieve. So we can say we've been conditioned, and that's somewhat true, but it can also be said that the consequence of the human condition,
Hmm.
okay, this is important. To the extent I don't disagree that we've been conditioned, and I do believe that there's forces of monopoly, marketing that are
Hmm.
coercing our thoughts.
Yes.
Okay, that's true. That's conditioning. But
Yes.
simultaneously, the human condition as a whole is operative. So that means that we're each responsible for the conditioning. We're actually each responsible. So, for example, YouTube with the modern internet came along, and what some people have cleverly realized, which are basically citizen journalists, is that bad news sells. So
Hmm.
they want to alert everybody to the bad guys or to the bad things going on, and it's all over the place everywhere. But
Everywhere.
they, in a way, they're what's happening, and they're not. There's other YouTube channels that are celebrating life.
Yes.
So, but it's a question of choice. If you want to choose to tune into the negative, the which is, by the way, why people are doing that. And it's not just that they want the drama, it's because they're operating off of their instinctual brain. They've become frightened, so their instincts are alerted. So fear is, yes, there may be certain nefarious forces creating fear. I think that's true,
I do too.
but we are actually contributing to it ourselves.
Hmm.
It's really important. So, in other words, when you get into this holistic thinking, you have like the key to your power, by the way, in a very practical sense, is you have, okay, and you're doing this, but I just want to say the phrase in the human condition, when you take full responsibility, like when you say, I am a cell in the larger body and I'm responsible for my contribution. That key word.
Yes.
When you become responsible, you take your power and you stop exposing yourself to the negative conditioning, for example. And right this moment today, you choose to go, I'm going to focus on the good. Now, some people might say, well, that's idealistic and Pollyanna.
Hmm.
And I will say to them, oh, okay, right. So now that you have access to all this information, now, so your sphere of concern for the world has been expanded. Yes? They're like, yes. Okay, so how much influence do you have? And the answer is a very small amount. So what's happened is the average person it's the human condition. I'm not blaming anybody.
Right.
In the human condition, we have, with modern technology and the internet, we have access to information way beyond the average ever in history.
Hmm.
Okay, we know things. We're actually spoiled with the amount of information we have. Okay, but the realistic shift is go now, where's my influence? When you go there, when you get right into where's my influence and you zero in on it, the choice is yours. You have, we can talk about destiny and so forth, but your choice says, I am going to bring my attention to the sunrise and the birds and the beauty, because the truth is it's much larger than the negative.
Yes, it is.
The
I
good
truly feel
is
that.
much larger.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's much larger, and people are choosing to hate the politicians and
Mhm.
Trudeau and Trump and who, it's like, look, you're poisoning the world with your
Yeah.
hate.
Right.
You're inflating your ego with your negative opinions.
Hmm.
I'm not saying I never do that, but when I do it, I personally have trained myself to check my state. how am I feeling?
Right.
Answer, not good.
Right.
So if I get angry at a politician, say, then I have polluted my energy field with hate and anger and opinion and judgment
Yep.
because people, because the answer is you think, people think they know, but they don't know. So it's become a kind of ego prestige to know the negative.
Yeah.
See that?
Very true.
So you see what you're doing, by the way? Just, I truly mean this sincerely. You are actively breaking away from that collective tendency,
Hmm.
and you're engaged in this podcast, spiritually speaking, right?
Yes.
Uh, and here you are engaging in new conversations, new perspectives, new perceptions.
Hmm.
So this is really worth, you have every good reason to own that, like good for you. It doesn't make you better,
No,
but
it
you're
doesn't.
wise. I wouldn't call it better, I would call it wisdom,
Yeah.
because you're choosing to direct your energy in a purposeful way to focus on the positive, the good, the
Hmm.
possible. And my opinion would be, I would encourage you to continue there. It doesn't mean there's no room for creative, constructive, critical thinking.
Right.
There's room for that.
Yeah.
Oh, like we can talk about perceptions and beliefs and all kinds of things. And even it's true, we can talk about social trends that are happening that are, could be deemed manipulative, basically. Right?
Yes.
But once we identify, oh, okay, that social trend or that activity is manipulative, the key is now to stop dwelling and to bring our attention to where we have influence.
Right. Yes.
When that happens, so it happens to see what's happening. I'm sorry, I'm going on a bit, but I'll just say one thing. I said it, but I'll say it again. People are inflating their ego with their opinions.
Hmm.
But when you get close to your influence, and if you're sincere in your influence, you become much more humbled by the reality that there's only so much time and energy in your day, and how are you choosing to create it?
Yes.
And so, as with what you're doing, for example, you're contributing to alternative higher vibration perspective. I would encourage that's what you're doing. So and the value of that, by the way, is ours. We, the world, in an incremental way benefits, but the one who benefits the most, believe it or not, is you.
Yes. That's very true.
Like I see you, like, okay, so I don't mean to for a moment suggest you're not also benefiting me and everybody watching and listening, because you
Right.
are. But it's an ironic sort of thing that, like in all the religious songs, it always begins with me.
Hmm.
Like, and it's true because it comes back to what we started out at the very beginning talking about, is the reality of the intrinsic subjectivity of life. For example, there is no division, no separation really. So it becomes down to that all of existence, holism, can be translated as subjectivity. Subjective. In other words, there's no such thing really as objectivity ultimately. Objectivity is kind of an illusion that we share.
It is. Yes.
Okay, because you're processing through your subjective mechanism of brains
Hmm.
and embodiment. Okay, you mean everybody. So when you really get close to your one subjectivity, and you break free of the illusion of objectivity, you start to maximize the reality of the subjectivity. it's kind of like a funny thing to say that. It's like you become more aware of the choice and that you're making to be happy and healthy. And in a manner of speaking, the responsibility you're showing to yourself by generating high vibration
Mhm.
and to everybody else.
Yes.
So what's happening with the inflated egos with strong opinions is they're polluting.
Yeah.
They don't realize.
Right.
I would say to them, you're right and you're polluting. So it's a little tricky. Some people, like, for example, there's vigilant citizen journalists out there calling BS on things. They're like, hey, they're doing this and that's they're playing, they're manipulating us. Okay.
Right.
Now, to their credit, okay, these citizen journalists, to their credit, are focusing on their influence to share vigilant knowledge.
Hmm.
But if I take that information and make it my opinion and generate negativity as opposed to useful information, I have not done the same thing as they have done.
Right. Agreed.
It's the opposite end of the pole.
Hmm.
They have done, they have used their time and energy in a, yes, watchdog, vigilant manner,
Hmm.
but they have focused on their influence.
Hmm.
So it's a bit of a twist of irony of sorts that the person who absorbs that then attaches their anger, their fear, their frustration, their lack of gratitude onto it.
Hmm.
They have now created from that source of information a negative energy field.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
very ironic, isn't it? See
It's
what I'm
very,
saying?
yeah, it's very interesting. Yes,
It's a
definitely.
highly it's a bit of an irony, but it comes down to that. You see, it goes with a little bit, I must admit, when you said, like we're being conditioned.
Mm.
What's woven a little bit into that, and I'll kind of draw this to completion here, okay? Because I know we went on a bit longer than I might have hoped, but on the high side, it's good information.
It is good. Yes.
On the high side, the closer you get to your subjectivity, the more you become responsible of your field.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's as simple as that. Once you become responsible for your field, but what happens is what you said, which is I don't, and I do it too, no, nothing personal, is there's a victim that we're being done to us. So
Yeah.
it's not untrue. It's not untrue that there's negative forces manipulating. So
Right.
they're victimizing us. They're victimizing us.
Yes.
But do I choose to be a victim?
Exactly. Exactly. It's so true.
Yeah.
And we do make a difference. One person in increasing their vibration and spreading the positivity, you do make a difference. I saw this meme come across the other day about, if you think that one person can't make a difference, then you've never had a mosquito in your room, like one mosquito, like how
There
much
you
they
go.
can disrupt your piece, and
Beautiful.
then getting bitten and all of the things, that go along with that. So one person increasing their vibration does make a difference. And I think that's a really important distinction for people to know is that you're not lost in the masses. You are an important part of the integral whole.
The key, okay, there's a lot of ways of looking at it, but it goes like this. The physical life is and the game of life, if you want to call it, okay, is a game of power. There's
Yeah,
no doubt about it. You want power, I want power. Food in my stomach is power. Clothing on my body is power.
right.
Roof on my shoulder is power. Gas in my car is power.
Yeah.
Money in my hand, in my access is power. It's all about power.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's true.
But the key to power, the key is responsibility.
Absolutely.
And the way, if you want to throw away your power, go into victim consciousness.
Hmm.
Now, the key to responsibility is gratitude,
Yes.
by the way. It's a science of psychology, by the way. It's gratitude. You go, I'm grateful to be alive. There's
Yes.
a wonderful saying. I have an old saying that came up with it one day. I was thinking a lot about gratitude, and I realized I was thinking, what's true gratitude? I was
Hmm.
thinking about it for a while, and I came up with this phrase. True gratitude is the ability to feel grateful for being a part of the drama of life at all.
It's true. It's
At
true.
all.
Yeah.
At all. When you think about at all, you're like, what? Yeah, gratitude is the key to your attitude where you become focused on what's right with the world.
Yeah.
So we collectively are poisoning ourselves with what's wrong with the world. And
Yeah.
what we're doing indirectly is we're empowering certain networks to find, oh, we have a solution for you versus, okay, versus the more intimate spiritual psychological principle of gratitude, which can be kind of understood as a form of humility, but gratitude creates humility.
Hmm.
That's why all the wise people out there are talking about gratitude, gratitude, gratitude. And if you can start to feel grateful for being a part of the drama of life at all, you'll shift your state into a state of responsibility of how can I contribute more to the good.
Yes. Yes.
It's as simple as that.
It's
It's it's almost as simple as that.
yeah.
So that's a beautiful. I say it to my clients all the time. I'm giving them information and articles I've written on gratitude because it's not about belief in any deity. It's not
Right.
about religion.
No, it's
It's
not.
not. It's spiritual. It's what's called spiritual psychology, by the way. Spiritual psychology. And by the way, and it goes, and then I'm going to bring this full circle because we can talk more about everything we've talked about today, the sun and the fact that it's not just an object in the sky, which is could be looked at that way, but it's more than that, etc.
Yes.
Goes like this. The correspondence in the whole of this field of the sun is in your heart chakra. So that's why some people will depict the sun in the heart, and that's an accurate prediction. It's not just poetry. It's literally, spiritually, scientifically, precisely accurate. And the key to opening your heart chakra, guess what it is? Gratitude.
Mm.
It is gratitude. It's not a maybe, right? I not like people go, oh, well, that's just a theory. No, 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 no. Like I say to people all the time, be a good scientist,
Experience it.
experience and do it.
Yeah,
Just
do
keep
it.
like work on, can I be more grateful?
Yeah.
Like work on it every day. Can I be more grateful? Now, what's the opposite of gratitude? Entitlement.
Mm. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes. We humanity are spoiled, rotten in, yes,
It's so
we
true.
are we are creating this negativity with our entitlement. Now,
Hmm.
there may be, if everybody started exercising more gratitude, say,
Yeah.
okay, if it became like a wave and a trend, a bigger wave of more and more people, you would be able to identify those who aren't interested in it. They,
Mm.
they would become like, what's wrong with you? Like, where's your gratitude?
Yeah.
But in and the thing is that when there's entitlement, versus the gratitude is linked to the heart chakra, which is a unity communion chakra. Okay,
Hmm.
it's unity, communion, wholeness, oneness, holiness. Okay, okay. But when you go into entitlement, you go into divisiveness.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes part. So you, and when we have divisiveness, what it invites is manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
not so they when you're in gratitude, you go into contribution. When you're in entitlement, you go into manipulation.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would
Yeah.
I would offer also that it feels, because I know we're talking about the sun, it feels like the sun when you have that gratitude, when you are sharing that with the world and just looking at that at the world view with that light in your heart, it completely changes everything. And how can you not affect other people when you're exuding that kind of light? It would be like lighting a candle in a dark room. It's going to affect other things. So I love that. And I think it's such a beautiful, beautiful concept. And I invite people to give this gratitude thing a shot, do your own experiment. Like you said, do your own experiment and take a week and just every day find something to be grateful for and say it out loud or say it in your mind, but give it a week and see what is different in your life. What do you notice during that week? Just do an experiment and see where it takes you.
People will become happier, they'll become more energetic, they'll be more present.
Yeah.
The gratitude tends to produce more gratitude.
Yes.
By the way, now, okay, look, not every day is as good as the other day. We get a little grumpy, we get a little tired, we can be lacking in nutrition a little bit. Who knows what's going on? But we can establish a larger degree of our state as being that. And yes, we will change the world. So it's an
Yeah.
energetic, and I wanted to clarify, and as a few, it goes on a little bit, but goes like this. It's not an ethical it's not, this is very important to understand. It is not ethical what we're talking about. It doesn't mean, oh, I'm grateful, I'm good. No, no, no. It's energetic.
Yeah.
It's energetic. When you're in gratitude, you're happy. You love, it's like being in love. You love everybody, you
Yeah.
love everything. But what we've created in the world is kind of a notion of romantic love, like Romeo and Juliet, and I'll die if I can't be with you, and all this kind of
Yes.
manipulation,
Yes.
actually. But the thing is when you're in love, like in a, it's kind of like you're in your love field. So you're like in truth. It's actually truth, because love, if you were to think about it, would invariably be unity.
Mm-hmm.
It has There's no separation in love, really.
Right.
You're right. So so it goes on and on like that. And so the metaphysics and the whole spiritual understanding of the sun and our existence in it,
Yeah.
and then holistic parallel way, we find that the sun is the chakra in my own heart, and you can make that leap from not feeling separate from everything else, which is head brain, and
Mm-hmm.
you go into heart brain, you cultivate communion. So the gratitude cultivates communion energetically, not intellectually.
Yeah.
Is the ancient understanding, but here we are. Isn't that right? Okay. So that's it, it's almost like it's so obvious that you have to repeat it 10 times. That's how ironic it is. It's
It is.
so obvious. It's like you're like, this is obvious, but what's not obvious to the person who's walking around thinking they know themselves, they're living in their head brain
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and driven by their instinct brain. So between their head and their instinct without their heart brain, they're really not alive.
Yeah.
We're not fully alive. And we live in a shadowy world of reactive fears and narrow-minded thinking and separation and suspicion. It's almost as simple as that. It's very ironic to think how simple it is.
Yeah. So we just
You
need
know?
to allow ourselves to see the sun and be the sun, right?
Yeah, and like because we each have our own subjective experience, one person you could be standing like truly and honestly, people have a notion of heaven over there and hell over here. Let me tell you something. You'd be two people standing one by side. One is in heaven and the other's in hell. And it's
Exactly.
evident.
Yes.
It's evident. You can just go like see it around, look around, and you go, wow. And there's various degrees then, like you can be in lower heaven or higher heaven, or you can be in lower hell or higher hell. But it's so it's not the people aren't really realizing because they're operating on various degrees of victim consciousness. They don't responsible and owning their power.
Yeah.
They go into various levels of hell even though even though we are spoiled.
Mhm. Yeah. It's
Like
true.
like even if you're relatively poor compared to history,
Yeah.
you can be in a soup line and it's relatively spoiled because not long ago in history there was no soup line.
Right. Oh, very true. Very true.
Oh yeah, there was no welfare, no nothing. And like the way that the tribes would have to live is in a very tribal structured society to contribute every day to make sure that there was no need for something called a soup line.
Hmm. Yeah.
Okay, now not to put anything down, it's just the way that, but anyway, I digress. I don't mean to get lost in it. The point has been made. And yeah, it's a nice come full circle, bring it back down to earth into the physical body, because this whole discussion, like astrology, can seem kind of cosmic and out there.
Yeah.
People will say, well, astrology, that's kind of out there. I'm like, no, astrology is about everything going on here, but astronomy is what's going on out there. And
Yeah.
that's a kind of an interesting kind of bring it full circle. Astrology is all about everything. It's been described as astronomy brought down to earth and applied to the affairs of humanity.
Hmm.
That's what astrology is. Is
Yeah.
it's the archetypal code. It's the archetypal code, the blueprint of existence in the earth, air, fire, and water. And the sun, of course, plays an exceedingly vital part because when we get into the earth, air, fire, and water principle, it's the fire that's the spirit source element.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll leave it on that point. Maybe we, in future talks, we can get a little bit more into the astrology, in a more technical, mechanical sense,
Sure.
like the 12 signs and the four elements. It could be kind of fun to do that.
Yeah.
But for now, yeah, I feel like I've said what mostly I feel needs to be said about it, even though it can be elaborated upon what we said today. But
Well,
people go
sure.
away with, wow, the solar system's a cosmic cell.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like there, like I know I will not look at the sunrise or sunset the same way again because of our conversation today. And just
Nice.
realizing that we live in the sun, we like truly do. And we hear that
Sure.
term solar system. We've heard it since elementary school. We've heard that term and studied it, and never one time has it really penetrated my understanding what exactly that truly means until today. So I love that.
Yeah, we've
So
been,
thank you.
yes, wonderful. We've been socially conditioned, it's true, to think significantly with our head brain and our gut brain, head rationale, gut instinct, and they drive each other. So if we want to make meaningful contributions to the world, the key is to activate your heart brain. That is the key. It's known as the master brain. And if there is black magic on the planet, they have wanted to keep people away from it. But
Yes.
rather than blame anybody personally,
Yeah.
I've gone there,
Sure.
but I found A, it doesn't feel good, and B, it has no power. So if I go into self-responsibility, that's what I was saying. If I go into self-responsibility, focus on my sphere of influence, exercise gratitude to keep my whole being in a communion state, then I'm going to create the world that we're seeking. And I'm not going to get lost into blaming and demonization.
Right.
That is the other dark side of what we're doing without realizing.
Yep.
whether it's people hate Trump or they hate Biden or they hate Trudeau. It's like, wow, that's not a meaningful contribution. So they're going around with I am right
Yes.
consciousness
Yes.
as opposed to I'm connected consciousness.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and by the way, on YouTube, of course, and use the reels and the short things, there's all kinds of good people putting out a ton of positivity.
Yes. Yeah.
A ton of it,
True.
you know. So there's a lot of wisdom in all of us shifting. It's kind of like what they say, voting with your dollar. Shift to more positivity. As I tell myself that I find myself even as I sit here thinking I'm going to take it to new levels of, eh, selective and not engaging
Yeah.
because I've got, my share of various citizen journalist types who I admire for their diligence, but I also recognize that they're deeply invested
Hmm.
in the endless fear-based bad news.
Yes.
And that what happens is it's kind of addictive because now they're getting a more subscribers and that makes more money.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's what they would say. That's how the ego mind works. It's very slippery.
It certainly is. You have to be mindful, be mindful and ever vigilant to, keep your energy and your focus, in more positive places so that it puts that good out into the world instead of all of this muck.
Exactly. You have to be mindful.
Yes. Mindful here.
But you are
Heartful.
right, Dee. That is precisely exactly the word, mindful. Yes, indeed. So, hey, I think we're good, hey, for today.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here again, Michael. I
Yeah,
truly appreciate
my
you.
pleasure.
And thank you everyone for tuning in to another episode of Spiritually Speaking. I hope that you will like, share, and subscribe so we can get this information out to everyone who needs it. And as always, I love you all, and we'll see you on the next one.